look a little bit like a bum today. I wore my sweats because my kids are both sick. I got a little bit of something too, and then my son finally was like taking a nap, but in our bedroom, and I didn't want to walk through and risk waking him up. And so I gladly took that as an excuse to come to work in my sweats. And I didn't get some videos up. I did not get them recorded, but I did kind of get the next chunk of code for us. And so we'll just walk through it, and I got some exercises for us to do, and then I'll record those videos tonight or tomorrow. And so we're going to look at outlining in HTML, and then we're also going to look at structured data, also sometimes known as rich snippets. There's another name it goes by, but we'll take a look at that too. It's just interesting to me. I've kind of, hello.
Hello, how are you?
Good. I've kind of been interested in that for a while, so I'm just kind of curious to hear your opinion and perspective on it, and whether or not it's something that's worthy or not. I think it is, because the end result's worthy. Anyhow, I'll show it to you in a second. Okay, so when we left off, if we look at our outline, we left off at, we did 25, 27 exercise solutions, right? And so we were doing all of the structuring, getting everything. We left off right here. So I now have this folder outline, and right there. So we did that one. We're going to do outline. I'm just going to zoom in so you can see that. So if you have your code that you've downloaded, you could stay up current with me. So I'm going to do a get status, and that'll tell me the status, and it says my branch is up to date with origin master. Okay, so that just means that, okay, I've already pushed all the changes I've made. They're up there at origin master, the origin from which everybody who's connecting to this repo draws, and the branch is master. So they're up there with the origin, they're up on GitHub. And so that's good. And so the first thing I just want to look at is we already saw this Bourdain example. And there's a few notes that I have here. And so one of the notes is right here. So what I'm going to teach you is just, I don't know, I think it's good to be aware of it. It's good to just stop and think, how are you going to, just like, the big picture is, how am I going to structure the content I want to deliver to people? So you have actually gone into the publishing industry. I'm not sure if you're aware of this, right? And the publishing industry has a long history, going all the way back to drawing on cave walls, and then creating books, and people transcribing books by hand, monks transcribing books by hand, and then the printing press, and Martin Luther, right, and the printing press, and whatever, he nailed something to a door for some reason, or somebody did back in those days, and that had some historical significance. You guys remember that? What was that? Somebody nailed something to the door. What was it?
It was the start of religion.
Yeah, something like that.
He objected to something in the religion, so he wrote up some religious thing. And
nailed it to the door. I remember that from history class. Right, and so then, newspapers and books, and now we produce content for people on the web, publishing. And so when we deliver content to people, we got to think about how we're going to structure it. And so the first part we were doing was breaking it up into our tags and sectioning the content. And then we also kind of want to maybe do an outline. And so when we do that outline, right, just as a little bit of review, we already saw this, and this is kind of nice. We could get this outliner tool, and then we could have an outline, And so what is that outline good for? Well, for accessibility, maybe also for search page rank, and then also I think primarily is just you've sat down and thought about your content and how to structure it, making sure it's structured well. And content in terms of consumability, right? Like just organizing it. So it's the same way with this course. I've put together, this document. I've sat down and thought about how to organize it. And when I organize it correctly, it produces this nice outline. And so that allows you to sort of, navigate the site and see what's going on. So I don't know. I think that on the level of importance, this is like nice to know, not a need to know. And in terms of best practices, it's good to have this awareness in your tool belt, and good to sort of work towards being able to have your code present a nice outline. And so, your code will have an outline like this. But then in practice, sometimes it's a little bit hard to get that beautiful outline just like that. But that's the thing. And so I preface it all with that, because if you go to MDN section outline, I don't know. right here. Sections and outlines of MDN. It says right here, there are no currently known implementations of the outline algorithm. So there's an algorithm called the outline algorithm, right? And so in graphical browsers or assistive tech user agents. So although the algorithm is implemented in other software such as conformance checkers, therefore the outline algorithm cannot be relied upon to convey document structure to users. Authors are advised to use heading rank H1 through H6 to convey document structure. So the ultimate takeaway is H1 through H6 is how you want to structure your document. And so that's really straightforward in terms of like structuring your document. And H1 through H6 is, let me just see, oh, here we go, I've got it right here, headings only. Right, so here's a document structure with H1 through H6. That's it. Okay? So you can see I've even indented it. That's pretty much what the outline is going to pop out when I go over and I outline it. I have no content there. It's just my entire outline is done with H1 through H6. And this is what you want to use. This is what you want to do. You want your outline to be built off of H1 through H6. Okay? And I'm like 90% solid on this material, which means 10% I'm not solid on, so we might be making a few adjustments as I go through this. So I've just been researching it the last couple of weeks. It's been in my awareness for the last year. I've done a little bit of stuff before that, but just getting more solid with it myself. So if I run this outline algorithm, it gives me the exact same outline we saw before. But that outline's built with H1 through H6. So this is exactly the same page as we saw with this, right here. But I just sort of like the header I took out of there. Header doesn't, and so there's two pieces of information here. H1 through H6 will create outline, and then you're going to also have other elements or tags which can contribute to your outline if the HTML5 outline algorithm was working. Okay, and so then when you use this tool up here in your browser to see your outline, then it's going to integrate. That's going to be using the outline algorithm where your semantic elements contribute. I'm not clear on that actually, right? Like, because I am clear on it. The documentation says only H1 through H6, but then when I use like this outlining tool, right? And let's just do HTML5 outline checker or validator, HTML5 outliner, outline algorithm, document outline, validator. I'm just wondering if there's a tool, see what that's the exact one I just opened. So I don't know who this guy is, GS Snedders, right? But if we popped in the same code right here for the Bourdain one, let's just drop that in there. Outline this. That's the same outline I just got. So we could play with his implementation too. All right, so just the main thing you should be taking away though right now is H1 through H6 contributes to the outline. And that little README was just what I showed you from MDN. That's straight out of MDN. No known implementations of the outline algorithm use H1 through H6. So that's MDN. All right? But then they go on to show you how to do all the outlining. So it's kind of weird. Right? It's a little bit uncertain. If you have any perspective on that, chime in.
Question.
Yeah.
Does it have anything to do with page ranking and how clearly that's in its outline?
Nobody knows how they rank pages, and my sort of go-to is always like well-built pages will rank better than poorly built pages, and the more you use the right things, the better. And so this is there are some cool videos about SEO which I want to watch from Google right down here. Like here's this one.
Hi, I'm Miley. Oh, yeah.
I guess I got to turn that off, otherwise I got to pause this. They're all like insane about. All right, so yeah, I don't know. You can check that out. So here's another outline the page. Right, the first one had some other stuff in it, and LIs, ULs, paragraphs, headers, and the second one is just like let me just play with the headings. Okay, so there are the headings, and then the third one, is I added the other tags back in, right? And so I'm not sure what I changed here between the first one. So here's the first one. Here's the second one. I'm just going to split that vertically. That's something you could do. And then close this one so I can compare the first one. I'm just making sure I'm recording. To the second one. And the one difference between these was down here in the footer. The first one had H1 and H2. And the second one has H1 and H2. I'm going to delete H1. I had that wrong. Delete H1 and H2. And I can make these H2 if I want. And then also, that one should come over here. H2. And then Control G, H3. All right. And that oh, dang, I selected all of them. Let me undo that. Okay, I just want this one and those. There we go. Cool. All right. So why did I do that? So if you look at this, page here, right? Just with the headings, this is H1 through H6. Okay, I did H1 as my main, and then H2 are my next subpoints, and H3s were my points after that. Capiche? Yes? And that's different from what I had in my original document. In my original document, I had a footer and a nav, and H1 and H2. Huh? Right? And I've made those in just using the headings. I made those H2 and H3s so that those correspond with headings to the right level. Right? So when I came back and I was like, let me change this so that this page has the headings creating the correct level, right? I had to change H1 to and H2 to H2 and H3. So I made a little annotation here. I deleted H1 and H2, right? And that's just, like a comment kind of. But I actually added it in just to show the del thing. And then I made them H2 and H3. So this became H2, and this became these all became H3s. Those all became H3s. How many people don't know what the hell I'm talking about? Raise your hand. Okay, let's start over. We already saw this Anthony Bourdain page. And it produces this outline. And we can look at that outline. And it's like, okay, cool. There's the outline. About Bourdain, contact Anthony, find more info. And then we learn from MDN, do not rely on document the outline algorithm. Use only H1 through H6. All right, cool. Well, let me just look at this with H1 through H6. When I look at this through H1 through H6, to get that to work right, just using H1 and H6, I have to change find more info to H2. In this first document, find more info is H1. And I have to change all these down here to H3. In this first document, they're H2s. Now we're going to understand in a minute why that works. Or why that way, why they could do that inside the nav tag. Right? But here, if I just rely on H1 through H6, I have to structure it like that. Okay, so when I go back and I recreate this document and add all the stuff around there, this is now H2 and H3. And this produces the exact same outline. That outline is exactly the same as my first outline. In this code, find more info, inspect, that find more info is an H1 in that code. In this code, find more info is an H2 with H3s, but they produce the same outline. Now, which one is better? Which way should you do it? This is engineering. It's about precision. It's about reusing the right component in the right place, about having the right bolt for the right, place you need to make things work. Right? So if we're going to be precise about it, the correct one is to go by what MDN says and try to use H1 through H6. Right? But we need to do that within our other tags. Well, there's a bit of a snafu because inside our other tags, we can use those tags to also contribute to the outline. And that's what happens in the first one. So let me teach you that, and then we'll come back to this example, and it'll make sense. So here we could create explicit and implicit sections. And so if we look at our notes, I've sort of distilled from all the documentation this right here. How do we create our outline? So how do we create our outline? Our outline can be created by body, section, article, aside, and nav. And let me just change that because I came up with an acronym. Nav, article, section, aside. And you can remember that because that's NASA. And body's just, you don't use it. It's just once on the page, that's it. But nav, article, section, aside, NASA, right? NASA, nav, article, section, aside. That's the mnemonic device. Those explicitly contribute to the outline. And you also have H1 and H6 contributing to the outline. So let's just see it in action. So here, nav, article, section, aside. Sweet. What happens with my outline when I run that? Untitled body, untitled nav, untitled article, untitled section, untitled aside. Huh. All right. Well, how do we get titles? You have to use headings. So let's do explicit sections with headings. That's my next file here. Explicit sections with headings. So the first one I just had nav, article, section, aside, NASA. Right? These HTML semantic elements contribute to the outline. And I always have to remember that the only way, ultimately, I want my outline to also the touchstone for my outline is the headings. So it has to work with both nav, article, section, aside, algorithm outlining tags contributing to the outline. And if those tags weren't contributing to the outline, it's just H1 through H6, it has to have it give me the same result. That's the puzzle. Let me say that again. I need to make sure that the outline that is built just off of H1 through H6 is the same outline which is built off of my NASA tags, nav, article, section, aside, and headings combined together. And there's two different ways they'll be interpreted. The way that is used today is H1 through H6, but outlining also will be impacted by the nav, article, section, aside. So here I've added headings. And now before we saw that they were all untitled, and now heading for explicit section body, heading for explicit section nav, article, section, aside. So they all got titles instead of being untitled. So the way that works, the first heading in an explicit section, so you explicitly create a section in the outline with nav, article, section, aside. Body does it too, but that's used once on a page. So you explicitly create a section, nav, article, section, aside, and the first heading in an explicit section represents the heading for that section. So that's exactly what we did right here. So the first heading in an explicit section, represents a heading for that explicit section. What would happen if this was H6? Same thing, it's the first heading. What would happen if this was H5? Let me just play with this for a second. I'm going to blow my hand just through live preview here. Sometimes it doesn't. 5 is the exact same thing as 6. And then what happens if I do inside here? So let's say I had heading 5. And I had heading 6. Pump it up. Pump it up. Cool. Right? Because the first one is the heading for that explicit section. Next one's just a subheading, which is what it turned out to be. What about if I had H5 right here? What? Here's the second H5. This one's now a subheading of that one. Looks like that became a new section. What about if I did take that out and right under the H6, let's do an H1. This is an H1. So that also put it over there to that level. What if I did an H1 outside of an explicit section? I'll do H1 outside explicit section. Whoa. So it starts to get like, you got this weird stuff going on. You got to think about your NASA, your nav article section aside. Those all contribute to your outline. And you also got to think about your H1 through your H6. And there's a weird interaction that the first heading in an explicit section, represents the heading for that section. So that just gives that section a name in the outline. And subsequent headings of equal or higher rank start a new implicit section. So that's what happened right here. Subsequent headings of equal or higher rank, right? So it happened with the H5 and the H1, started a new implicit section. Implicitly, we're going H1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. H1, oh, this must be a new section. We went back up. And that's an implicit section. So this right here ended the nav section, even though it's inside nav. So that wouldn't be good coding, I don't think. But it ended the nav section, and it's like, here's a new section. Yeah, that would not be bad. That would not be good coding. So you're like creating a new section. You're saying it's in this one. It's not anymore. It's out. Let's get rid of that. And let's just put all this back to the way it was for this example. That's it. And then, so here's some more on implicit sections. So implicit sections, just playing with them. With a pen and a piece of paper, this is an exercise. What's this outline going to be? So just look at that and outline it. And just get the indent levels, right? So write it out. Pen and a piece of paper. I'm going to pause this video and then, so there's my guess of what it'll look like. And now let's go take a look and see what it actually looks like. All right. So I was off on this one right here, the 5. The 5 should be like this. There we go. So it should be like that. So the interesting thing is the H1s got put at the same level as body. And a lot of times we're seeing body and then everything's under it, right? And so when we gave H1 to body, and then we made other H1s, they're all at the same level. And then we just had the cascading going down of the tags in the outline, and then the new implicit one came back to H5, and then H6. And you know, intuitively, if we're just to think about what's the levels, what are the levels of H tags? Okay, cool, those are the levels. So let's try some more. There we go. What's going to happen with this one? So we have the same thing from before, H1, H1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, then 5, 6, and then 1. And then we have a nav with H1, an article with H1, a section with H1, and a side with H1. So, you know, same deal as before, but what's it going to look like? So we already have this one, right? It was like this. Oops, that's too far. And that's all coming over. We already have that. But what's going to happen with the stuff down below? So nav article section aside are what? They are explicit sections. And then the H1s are headings for those sections. So they're going to be at that level, or are they going to be at this level? How many people say this level? How many people say that level? It's uncertain. I'm still not even totally sure about it. Huh? Now if article section aside, all got bumped in one. The H1 is over against the wall, right? But now if article section aside, all came over a level. So if we had an H1 right here, another H1, right? That's just another, gotta refresh. Another right there. And then it put under each of those, right? That's a, so for something to get against the wall, it has to be an H1 outside of an explicit section, I found. Because there's kind of like the top level, like, you know, normally if we were to look at that Anthony Bourdain page, right, there's this top level, it's kind of like body. If it's untitled, it's just body, and then everything got nested down below. Even when, so let's look at this one here. Even here, same outline. And what that looks like is H1, H2, H2. What would happen if we did our H1 with Anthony? Another. Put another against the wall too, right? So an H1 outside of an explicit section goes against the wall. Bring these back over. Get rid of that one. '06, what happened to '07? Implicit sections, experimentation. Seems like '07. Did I delete an '07? Just misnumbered. All right, so here's some more. Let's look at the rules. Let's come back and look at the rules, and then we'll try some more. So the rules, explicit sections, NASA, nav article section aside, and then also body, but that's just on every page once. Implicit sections are H1 through H6. The first heading of in an explicit section represents the heading for that section. I think that in this, this document outline here, it'd be better if I take this, I don't know, it's pluses, minuses each way. I guess that's fine. The first heading in an explicit section represents the heading for that section. Subsequent headings of equal or higher rank start a new implicit section. Subsequent headings of lower rank start a new implicit section that is a subsection of the previous section. So those are the rules. So do this one. What's this outline going to look like? Thirty more seconds. Oh, 10 seconds. All right, so we know that body and NASA, nav, article, section, aside, are going to create explicit sections. So the first thing is body. So we're just going to have an untitled body. It's going to be the first one. And then indented from that, we will have an article, and that article will be heading for explicit section article. That will be the heading of it. And then that will have a subsection, and that will be that H2. And then we're going to have a new H1. But since that H1 is not out on its own, since it's inside an explicit section, it's not going to be against the wall. It'll be indented one level from body. And so what that will look like is body, untitled, and then heading for explicit section, la la la, and then sub, and then a new implicit section. So that's what our outline is going to look like, where that's just from the body right here. And then this heading, this one right here, is the heading for the explicit section from that. And this one is from right here. And then this one is from right here. And this ends the article tag, right? This one here ended the article tag from an outlining perspective. Having two, you didn't continue to decrease in headings, you went up, you're out of that tag. So just remember that as you have a nav, an article, a section, or an aside. You could go down in headings. As soon as you go up in headings, you've just closed that section. And it's like headings of equal rank, equal or higher rank start a new section. That's kind of weird because it's almost like I'd like a section with two H2s or two H1s. Right? I've got two H1s in this article. Great. No, you can only have one. I want two H2s in the article. What if I did another H2? Well, let's see this one first. Untitled body, heading, the sub, and then you're back out. And if I wanted to go against the wall, will this go against the wall? As far as to the left as you can go with outline. Against the wall. All right? And is this one going to be H2 still in my article? Whoa, that's weird. Because I thought it was equal or higher, but I'm still in my article, so I could have multiple H2s. What about this? H2, and then H2 has a sub, H3, sub of first H2. Now am I going to leave it? Still in my article. Are those new sections? That's the section. So maybe it's just like the first one that comes in. Put this back. So this isn't clear, and I apologize for that. It's not clear to me either. This is like an interesting, like if we were taking a trip to New York, let's change that analogy. If we were taking a trip to Portland, we just get on the I-5, right? And that's the pathway we would travel, is the I-5, right? This is kind of like we were like, it might be kind of nice to know about the California redwoods. Let's go over there and take a look. So it's a little bit off the main pathway for learning web dev, but I also think it's important. How many people think it's not important at all? Why are you bothering us with this? I just want to make things that look pretty. And how many people think, I think this is probably pretty good to know about? I think it's probably pretty good to know about because you'll be informed and you'll understand, okay, nav article section aside, that's what contributes to my heading along with my H1 and H6. Ultimately, at the end of the day, the document outlining algorithm's not being implemented, so I want H1 through H6 to define levels of importance within my structure, right? But I kind of understand why I get tweaky results when I look at this outlining thing, and nobody uses it. Like if you look at the big sites, nobody really does outlining well. CNN, kinda, right? But I think they might just be getting lucky with their headings. But that's telling me stuff. Top stories and underneath 1, 2, 3, 4. Super Bowl 50 and F-15's getting ready for it. Okay, news and buzz, Super Bowl 50, more, recommended, right? Like that outline is working. It's working okay. But that's kind of weird. Untitled body, untitled section. Like I'd like it if those were titled. Sometimes it's not going to make sense. You don't want to put in an H1 and then hide it. That's like, you might be able to do that with JavaScript or some CSS tag. Oh, here's my H1. Now I've hidden it. Now my outline looks good. The search engine will be like, you're just trying to increase page rank by tricking us into thinking there's something important on this page and then hiding it and not really showing it to your customers. And so that could red flag you. So you don't want to do things like that to get your outline to look pretty. But that looks pretty good. Like what would be on our website? We could look at their outline. Who?
I just had a question.
Oh, sorry, we're not doing questions. No, go ahead.
Since not a lot of people would have the outline widget, what could the outline be actually useful for?
I think that's a really good question. It's I think one, it's just a good exercise to understand how outlines are built. Two, from accessibility standpoint, H1 through H6 is going to be, I think, giving importance to people listening to that. Three, I think it's, just for me, it's like first I got to structure my content, like which tags do I use in which areas, and then, okay, here's this outlining thing. Why is that there? How does it work? How do I build a good outline? I don't know, man. Maybe it is, like, who cares? Why should we go look at the redwoods? Let's get to Portland. So that's basically a little bit of the intent of the question, right? Like, yeah, like, why are we going over to the redwoods? Let's get to Portland. But I don't know. If when we're in Portland, people ask us, hey, did you learn about the redwoods? We're like, yeah, I know about the redwoods. Like if you're in a bar or you're interviewing for a company or something. Sometimes I just get my mind just fixates on something, because when we look at like the document MDN, I guess I've closed. Oh, it's right here. I'm looking at all the other tabs. Sections and outlines of an HTML5 document. Like when I started looking at that, right, and I look at the MDN element list. It's like basic elements, document metadata, content sectioning. Okay, so we're going to section everything up, text content. So content sectioning, and then there's sections and outlines. I start reading about that, right? And I'm like, well, how do I get all this to work? It must be important. They have some stuff here. They've put a lot of effort into it. There are some articles out there on it. It's not a really big topic, but ultimately, at the end of the day, you want to deliver usability to your customers, and you could do that in a shoddy way, or you could try to do it in a thorough way where you understand all the different elements that you've put into it. Like one of the other things that kind of comes up for me is, I said, what is structured data? And so structured data is, there's a million sites out there that use it. Literally, like that's the statistic, a million sites, and I don't remember where I saw that. But maybe is at schema.org. I want schema.org. 10 million sites use schema.org. Okay. And so why would you want to know about, no, I can't highlight, I can't see. There we go. 10 million sites use schema.org. Why would you want to know about that? How many sites are out there? Well, that's like what this example is here. Right? When I search for chocolate chip cookie recipe, that's structured data, And so for me, outline and structured data are kind of like in the same category. It's like I'm structuring my content. So that's what we're talking about at the beginning, and so I just want to put it onto your awareness and your horizon. Outline's definitely less useful than schema.org, structured data. But structured data allows search engines to understand the content on your page more easily following a predefined schematic, why it's called schema.org. and then when people search for stuff, if you have valuable information that they could convey to their users, people who are searching for something more easily, you're more likely to rank and be up at the top. And then people will be like, sweet, that's the recipe I want. And they'll go there and you'll make your eighth of a penny for displaying an ad when they come to your site or whatever it is. And over here, like there's, so when you take that web page right there for the chocolate chip cookies and you run it through the structured data testing tool, you get this data over here, and that's how the search engine sees it. All right, let's look at the next exercise. How about this one? What outline does this code produce? Looks funny because you're seeing section up top because that's WebStorm, so let me get rid of that. There we go. And this is right straight from MDN. Like they say, nobody uses this, and this is how you use it. They have an entire bunch of articles and examples, and it's like, so it is confusing a little bit. Is it relevant? But I figured it can't hurt us to try to, produce a good outline. And it definitely seems like a screen reader would be zooming in on what's H1, H2, H3.
Yeah, I'm just reading an article about HTML outliner algorithm in Java.
Oh, for screen readers?
And it falls along the same lines. I mean, exactly. So that's really what it's about.
All right, so like 30 more seconds of just goofing with it yourself. And that's time. All right, so this one we're going to have our body. And then indented from that, we're going to have this first H1 will be the heading for this section. Right, so that'll be at the first level of indent. So and then so we'd have like body, and then that forest elephants. And then we have another section inside that. That's kind of interesting. It has its own H1, so that'll be an introduction. And then there's another one in there, so that's going to be like this. Habitat. And then we have an aside, and that aside is going to be also in here. Section, aside, so that'll be untitled aside. Because NASA, nav, article, section aside, NASA. And so that aside goes to the outline, but it doesn't have a title. And then we have the footer. Footer is not part of NASA. Nav, article, section aside. Footer is just footer. So that's not going to do anything. But yeah, so that's it with the footer. And so that's my guess. And here we have untitled body, forest elephants, introduction, habitat, untitled aside. And so that's what we get if we went over and played it. Anybody want to play it just to prove the book versus the bird versus the book? I imagine there's somebody. Cool. I literally spent like, hours on this, working these code samples and just trying to like find a logical way to explain it all and present it. And it gets confusing, the H1s, the H6. First one's the title for that new explicit section, and then equal or subheadings, I guess to the first title one. But other than, it's just like, how do you get it to do it nice? All right, what about this one? So very similar. We're talking about the elephants, but slightly different. So what's that one going to do? You got a minute. Well, Mongolian gerbils, I'm getting hungry. It's in Peru they eat gerbils. I promise we'll be starting layout soon. All right, so this is your time's up. So this is going to be a untitled body, and then indented from that. Indented from that, we'll have forest elephants, and then underneath that we have a new section and habitat, and then coming back out we have Mongolian gerbils. Right, and this sort of illustrates that one section had an H1, forest elephants, ended up there, and then another section had an H3, doesn't matter. And that's just the first heading, so that becomes the heading for that section. Right? Now, ideally, because H1 through H6 is pretty much what we need, our outline to logically translate to. H1, forest elephants, habitat, and I'd make this an H1, But this is just illustrating that, if I'm correct, I might be talking because I'm still just learning, making stuff up that doesn't make sense. But if I'm correct, then that's what it's going to look like, and that's why. Just to illustrate, first one's heading, doesn't matter. And so it's going to look like this. Untitled, forest elephants, habitat, Mongolian gerbils. Untitled, forest elephants, habitat, Mongolian gerbils. So I got it right. Somebody give me a gold star. So that's it right there. But kind of interesting, right? First heading, doesn't matter if it's H1 or H3, becomes the heading for that new section. And these sections are under body, so that's kind of where they end up. All right, we've got some more here. How many people enjoy these exercises? They're helping? How many people? No. Cool. Section. What's it going to give us? Let me take the clue out. That's from MDN. All right, 10 more seconds. So I'm thinking, well, that's 3 seconds. I'm thinking we're going to have an untitled body, and then indented from that, forest elements. That right there, forest elements, becomes the heading. And then we're going to have indented from that one level. right, we'll have habitat. So it'll be untitled, body, force elements, and habitat, each of them indented on their own lines. I don't have great confidence that I'm right. Okay, cool. The reason I didn't have confidence is I was like, I guess habitat's under force elements. That makes sense. But it didn't go over 2, you notice, right? I didn't go from here over, oh, that needs to be over indented twice. But what would happen if we had an H2? And this is where it's interesting just to play with it. You know, habitat 3, habitat 2. Now habitat 3 kicked over.
That's not because of H3. That's because of the sequence.
You had one before, yeah. So it just there's the way it comes out in the outline, and then there's also the way it logically is H1, H2, H3, but I don't know. Kind of interesting to play with. All right, so next one. What about this one? 30 seconds. So untitled body, and force elements, elephants, and then at the same level, Mongolian gerbils in a whole new section of its own. That's my guess. There we go. See it? Yeah, the H1 created a new section. Yeah. Yeah, bad design. All right, what about this one? It's the last one, I think. This one's hard. All right, so we're going to have a titled body. It's going to be mammals. And then indented from that one level, we'll have whales. And then we're creating a new section. And that's going to be force elements. Whales and force elephants are going to be at the same level. And then we hit H3 again. And I'm guessing since it's the same or higher, it creates a new section. We're going to have mammals, and then indented from that, whales, force elements, Mongolian gerbils, and reptiles, all at the same level. That's my guess. How many people guessed that? I don't know if I'm right. So remember the rules. The first heading is an explicit section. In an explicit section represents the heading for that section. Subsequent headings of equal or higher rank. Higher rank is H1, is higher than H2. Equal or higher rank start a new implicit section. So right here, this is equal or higher. So new implicit section. So we've ended this section badly, right? And then we have a section that's this, and then this is higher than H3, right? So now we got a new section, and that's the heading for the new section, right? Here's an explicit section, and the heading for it. here's an implied, implicit section and the heading for it. So you can go down from a heading level, you can't go up. But weirdly, right, we had that example where I think it was doing that. I don't remember where that was, but yeah, it doesn't require mastery. It does require awareness of this. There's something to know for you to know about sectioning roots. So block quote details, field set, figure, and TD are known as sectioning roots. So what outline would this produce? Based upon what you know, and then you'll understand what sectioning roots are when you get it wrong. Body is going to have, it's going to be titled, it'll be foo. Then indented from that one level will be bar. And then block quote starts a new outline all of its own because it's part of a, what do they call it? Sectioning root. It's a root for a new section in the outline. Okay? So block quote's just out somewhere on its own. And then quux is going to be at the same level as H2. And thud will be at the same level as quux and bar because that's the heading for that new explicit section. And then there's just some paragraph. So we're going to have bar, the title of the page is foo, and then bar, quux, and thud will all be at the same level. Bar, quux, thud. All at the same level. And foo is the title body. Title of the body section. So if it's a sectioning root, if it's a block quote, details, field set, figure, TD, just gets left out of the outline for that document. And somewhere there's a whole new outline for it, but my little outliner tool isn't showing it. Just FYI. Here's another exercise. What does this one produce? What outline does this produce? Thirty more seconds.
Because H1, you have to put the block quote there.
Block quote's kind of like it's just another tag that we'll use when we're structuring our document, step one, and we want to you know, it's for me it's kind of like a pull quote. So we'll look up the meaning of block quote when we're done with this exercise, just to see where we'd use it. But it's basically like it's a longer quote. A Q would be a short quote, and a block quote's like here's the long quote. All right, so body is not going to have a title, it'll be untitled body, and then indented from that one we'll have forced elements, and then indented from that we'll have introduction, and then at the same level we'll have habitat, and then block quotes totally ignored. So we're going to have untitled body and forced elements, and then indented under forced elements, introduction and habitat. So let's see. Untitled body, forced elements, and then indented from that, introduction and habitat. How many people got that? Cool. It takes a little work, and I'm not even sure, and I've spent hours with it. I read it. I've seen the answers already. I'm like, yes. What's that do? So what's the takeaway from all of this? What's the class info for tomorrow? I'll get it to you in a minute. So here's, we saw this already, the Bourdain example. And if we look at this, right, we have an untitled body. I don't really like that. Well, do we? Do we have an untitled body here? What are the explicit sections? They're created by NASA. What is NASA? Correct. And so header doesn't mean anything. Does that mean that the body is now titled Anthony Bourdain? I'm thinking so. But let's just look at the H1s. Anthony Bourdain's H1, or the headings. Anthony Bourdain's H1, About Bourdain's H2, Anthony's favorite restaurants. Yeah, I could see that being under About Bourdain. Anthony's favorite destinations. I could see that being under About Bourdain, right? And Anthony's favorite books. Okay, that's also under About Bourdain. And then H4s are all of the subpoints under the H3s. And then H2, we've gone back up to H2. So H2 is About Bourdain. And then also H2 here, contact Anthony, and then a subpoint beneath that. And then we had down here, find more info, and that's in a nav, right? So that's actually find more info. If that's the H1, I don't know, find more info, maybe I want that under make that an H2 also, right? Just from a heading standpoint. I'm just thinking this out loud. Does that make sense? Like if this is only headings? If we go back and look at the Bourdain example, what did I do here? Right? I did those H2 and H3s. Yeah, so that makes more sense. I got rid of the H1s, H2s, so I just need to do that here. So let's make these H2s, and we'll make these. I love this. Bless you. Make these H3s. So find more info, that's under Anthony. Find more info about it, right, the top one. So when we look at the outline for that, we have that nice outline. Anthony Bourdain, About Bourdain, contact Anthony, find more info, and then, subpoints with subpoints. And the only tag in here, which is contributing to the outline, is nav. Footer doesn't. It's only NASA and body. Nav article section aside. So the nav here is creating an explicit section, and this is the heading for that explicit section. But if something is also just reading it off of headings, then it's cool. It's all laid out well with headings too, right? And so that's the nav, and that's the only NASA in there. Nav article section aside. That's like one of the big takeaways from all this. So that one's a good example. Here's one on animals that I made, just sort of illustrate more stuff. H1 animals, and I have a section on canines, right? And so this is going to give me, the body will be called animals. And if I wanted to, that could be in a header. That might be kind of nice, just to give it a little bit more, I kind of like that. And then I have a section, which is canines, and then there's 3 sections in there for German Shepherd, Bernese Mountain Dog, and Pound Mutt. But if my top one is animals, then I think maybe I'll do this one H2, and then these H3, and then these guys I'll do those H4. That would make more sense because those stand on their own as headings now, right? They take out all the NASA stuff, and then they still work with the explicit sections, but also as headings they stand on their own. Yeah, right? I see some lights going on with people. And I'd also do that down here with felines. So felines is under animals, so I'm going to make those H2s. And then all these here. And I'm doing a Control G in WebStorm. Well, I just did one too many. I'm going to be way up changing some up there. And so Control G allows you to edit in multiple places. Oh, did I change these up here incorrectly? No, those are right. I want to change first. I want to change these H2s, otherwise I'm going to change more H2s. Those will be H3s, and then these will be H2s. So now when I look at this, should have a nice outline. Animals, canines, felines, German Shepherds, Bernese, Pound Mutt. Calico, tiger, cougar, temperament, attributes, stories. Cool. That stands on its own as just headings, where H1 is animals and H2, and then H2 is canines, and H3 gives you each dog, and H4s would be the details for each dog. Same here. H2. Oh wow, did I mess it up? H2 is canines. H2 is felines. Oh, these should be H3s and these should be H4s. I messed it up. H4, and these should be H3. There you go. H2, H3, and H4. Let's just double check that. So it still comes out fine, but now it's also standing well on its own as headings. So that would be like your animals. And then I did there's this fruit one is actually from where W3. And so here they did, let's see if they did it well. They did apples, that's the heading for the body. And then they created a section, so it's going to be a subheading. And here's a taste of apples, that's the title for that section. And then there's another subheading under that, and the title of that section is sweet. And then we have another one, color. And yeah, so that just corresponds. That's pretty straightforward. Let's just look at the outline it produces. Apples taste sweet, color. Apples taste sweet, color. You know, I'd probably fix this up, though. I'd probably do taste is at that level, and color is at that level, and sweet is at that level. So screw them, they didn't do it right. From everything I've just learned. You know, just my own synthesis of this material, you need to have everything work just H1 through H6. And then also, be aware how NASA's impacting it, your nav, your article, your section inside. And try to get those two to work well together so that when you look at the outline that's doing document outlining, it looks good. And when it's just H1 through H6, it looks good. Right? So you know, if anybody's ever looking at your page, it's like, oh, okay. Well, that takes some thinking. And so then I thought, well, can I do it with the outline for our course? Right? So I think I'll leave that as an exercise for you. But the solution's right there. So I'm going to make that a homework assignment, which is on our course, there's an outline. So just use headings, maybe some sections. There's obviously sections here, right? And logically, from both the H1 through H6 perspective, and then also from the perspective of, hey, I've got some explicit sectioning stuff in there with nav article section aside. Just do like 1, 2, 3, the first couple. You don't have to do it all because then you're going to be wrapping things with tags over and over. But at least get through here, like partway through here, so you get the first couple. So I'm going to leave that as an exercise, and then I'm also just going to give you an exercise where it's like, think about some content you want to convey and put it into, have it make a nice outline, some sort of structure within tags. So this will be like 2 assignments you take away. I think that's enough. We mentioned a little bit about structured data and that other stuff. I still got some learning to do on that. So I'll try to read up a little bit more on it between now and Thursday. But if anybody also wants to read up on that, it's pretty much what I showed you. I've just never built with it. I've never built anything with it, so I don't have any built examples. I'd like to have a built example saying, look, I put it into this page. So if you want to read up on that too. How many people appreciate, like, oh, I'm glad we learned this? All right, cool. And how many people are like, I just want to make it look pretty? It's a little bit too much detail. Sometimes, the devil's in the detail. And everybody knows the devil's where the fun's at.
Well, now it makes more sense why you don't see more people doing it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like, and I never really studied it to the extent you did, so it's really helpful to hear you do that.
Yeah, thanks.
Because now it makes sense why you don't see more people doing this type of correct outline.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah, because when you...
Also, I don't think there's been a big benefit as of yet
Yeah.
And I think there will be.
Yeah, maybe. Maybe. Hopefully. All right, that's all I got.